My name is Alexis, but everyone calls me Lexi, and I can still hear the sound of the trash bag hitting the floor the night my mom kicked me out. She stood in the doorway of our Phoenix apartment, dropped my clothes at my feet, and said, "You are 18 now, no money, no job, and that is on you, so get out." I thought she was bluffing, like all the other times she threatened to throw my stuff on the curb if I did not act more like an adult. Instead, she shoved my backpack into my hands, opened the front door, and pushed me into the hallway, then locked it behind me without even looking back. In seconds, I went from having a bedroom to standing outside with a trash bag, a dying phone, and $20 in my wallet. My mom had really kicked me out at 18 with no money and no job. I stared at the door and imagined myself pounding on it, begging her to change her mind, promising I would find work and stay out of her way. Then I pictured the little satisfied smile she would have if I did that, like she had finally proved I was weak and my pride burned hotter than my fear. So I picked up the bag and walked down the stairs, choosing to leave before I started crying in the hallway where everyone could hear. That night, I sat at a bus stop a few blocks away, hugging my backpack while cars rushed by like I was invisible, my phone screen glowing in my hand with her name one tap away. Calling her could have turned everything back into the same miserable routine, me apologizing and her pretending this was tough love instead of cruelty. I turned the phone off instead and whispered, "If you want me to survive alone, fine, I will." 3 years later, that same phone would not stop buzzing with messages from her, all starting with, "I am sorry." If you want to know how I went from that bus stop to watching my mom beg me to answer, stay with me until the end. The first night, I didn't sleep much at that bus stop. Every time a car slowed down, my heart jumped into my throat. By sunrise, my back ached from the hard plastic bench and my throat felt dry from swallowing tears I refused to let out. I walked to a 24-hour convenience store nearby and washed my face in the tiny bathroom sink, trying not to look like a girl who had just been kicked out by her own mom. I spent $5 of my $20 on a cheap breakfast sandwich and the smallest coffee they sold, staring at the receipt like it had personally insulted me. 1/4 of my money was gone and I had no plan. For the first few hours, I just walked, dragging my trash bag from strip mall to strip mall, pushing open cafe doors and asking, "Are you hiring?" The answers were almost always the same. "Not right now. Leave a resume online. Come back when we are less busy." I had never felt more invisible in my own city. By late afternoon, the Arizona heat wrapped around me like a heavy blanket, and I ended up wandering into a church basement that had a sign saying, "Free meals on Tuesdays and Thursdays." I went because I was hungry, but I stayed because a woman with a clipboard and tired, kind eyes sat down across from me and asked my name. She introduced herself as Rachel, a social worker who helped teens who were technically adults on paper, but still very much alone in real life. When she asked where I was sleeping, I pretended to check something on my phone so I did not have to look at her, then finally admitted, "I do not really have a place right now." She did not gasp or pity stare, just nodded like she had heard that answer 100 times. By the end of that conversation, she had me filling out forms for a youth shelter that offered short-term beds and a shared room in a worn-down but safe house across town. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a door that locked behind me and a mattress that was actually meant for sleeping, not waiting for buses. Over the next week, Rachel helped me more than my mom had in years. She walked me through applying for financial aid at a local community college and showed me a flyer for their digital marketing program. "You're already on your phone all day," she joked. "You might as well get paid for knowing how to use it." It sounded like a real future instead of just survival. So I said yes, even though I was terrified of failing. At the same time, I hit the job hunt harder. After a few more rejections, a tiny independent coffee shop in Phoenix finally hired me for early morning shifts. The pay was minimum wage and my feet hurt constantly, but every pay stub felt like proof that my mom was wrong about me. I added a second hustle, delivering food in the evenings, biking cheap plastic containers of takeout to apartment complexes and office parks for people who would never know their driver was sleeping in a shared room and counting every dollar. To stretch my money, I started playing a game with myself in grocery stores.
How many meals can I make out of $10 if I only buy store brands and sale items? I threw together strange combinations. Canned beans with boxed macaroni, frozen vegetables with instant rice, and discovered some of them actually tasted good. One night, on a dare to myself, I propped my cracked phone against an empty cereal box, hit record, and filmed a shaky video explaining how I made 3 dinners from the clearance section. I posted it to TikTok under the name Emergency Eats, half as a joke and half as a diary of how I was staying alive. At first, it got maybe 20 views, 1 or 2 comments from strangers saying things like, "Thanks, I needed this, I'm broke too." But that tiny flicker of connection warmed a part of me I thought was dead. While my mom pretended I didn't exist, complete strangers were telling me my ideas helped them. I still did not call her. I did not text, did not check in, even when the loneliness felt like a physical weight pressing on my chest at night. She was the one who said, if you want to survive alone, do it. So I did. I worked, I studied, I cooked from almost nothing, and without realizing it, I was slowly building the first pieces of the life that would one day collide with hers in a way she never expected. It took a few months before I was brave enough to type my mom's name into a search bar. Until then, Monica was just a ghost in my head, a voice that said things like, "You're useless, you'll never make it without me," every time my alarm went off at 4:30 in the morning for my coffee shift. One slow afternoon at the shelter, I was scrolling through my old Facebook account, the one I hadn't touched since high school, when a tagged photo popped up from a girl I barely knew. I almost scrolled past it until I recognized the profile picture in the corner. My mom, Monica Carter, smiling like she had never slammed a door in her life. In the photo, she stood next to a man in a crisp button-down shirt and a teenage girl in a sparkly dress. All 3 of them posed in front of a shiny SUV outside a big stucco house in a nice Phoenix suburb. The caption said, "Dinner with the Harpers. Love this little family." My stomach twisted. I clicked on the man's profile, saw the name Elliot Harper, owner of Harper Auto Detail, a chain of high-end auto shops around the valley. His timeline was full of pictures of custom cars, charity events, and one recent post of him and my mom at a fundraiser, her wearing a dress I knew there was no way she bought on a hotel assistant manager salary. The teenage girl was tagged too. Her name was Kayla Harper, 17, all winged eyeliner and designer sneakers, posting haul videos from luxury malls like it was nothing. What hit me hardest was my mom's caption under one of Kayla's photos. She had written, "So proud of my girl. She turned my life around after a really hard season." There was no sign that I had ever existed. No old photos, no mention of a daughter who had supposedly decided to run off and travel the world. It was like she had deleted me and replaced me with an upgraded model. Curiosity started buzzing louder than the hurt, so I went deeper. On one of Monica's posts, an old neighbor commented, "How is Alexis doing? I haven't seen her forever." My mall replied, "Oh, she left home to travel and figure herself out. She doesn't really keep in touch." I sat there in the shelter common room, phone in my hand, staring at those words over and over. In her version of the story, she didn't kick me out with a trash bag. I just drifted away like some free spirit who chose not to call. That lie stung almost more than the night itself. It meant she wanted people to think she was a good mother who had done everything right, and I was the irresponsible one. The more I stared at the screen, the more something ugly and sharp started bubbling up in my chest. I remembered all the weekends in high school when I skipped hanging out with friends to work extra shifts at the grocery and the diner, stuffing cash into an envelope in the back of my closet labeled college. That envelope had been my lifeline, the one thing that made the future feel less impossible. The night my mom kicked me out, there had been no time to grab it. I had never let myself think about it because the answer was obvious and it made me sick. Now, with my heart already broken open, I dug into my old bank account instead. The one I had used to deposit paychecks when the envelope felt too full to keep in the apartment. The account had been dormant since I left. I pulled up the history and scrolled back to the week of my 18th birthday. There it was, in cold digital numbers. A withdrawal that emptied almost everything I had. Done in person, at a branch near our old apartment. The same day my mom told me, "You are 18 now, I am done." I remembered her insisting she needed my debit card to check something a few days before, brushing off my questions with, "Do you not trust your own mother?" I had trusted her enough to hand it over. She used my savings to step into this shiny new life with the Harpers, then told the world I had wandered off by choice. I felt my hands shaking while I scrolled through picture after picture of dinners, vacations, new clothes. My ramen and clearance vegetables suddenly tasted different in my memory, like they were seasoned with someone else's stolen cash. For a second, I wanted to smash my phone and never think about any of it again, pretend I did not know. But another part of me, the part that had figured out how to turn $10 into 3 days of meals, knew knowledge was power. Seeing how far she was willing to go to erase me did not just hurt, it clarified something. My mom had not just made a mistake in anger, she had made a choice. She chose a nicer house, a richer man, and a picture-perfect stepdaughter over telling the truth about what she had done to her own kid. I locked my screen, pressed the phone against my chest, and realized this was not just a sad story about being kicked out. It was the beginning of something else, something that would eventually bring her perfect little world crashing down without me ever touching a single brick. Finding out what my mom had done did not make me feel powerful at first. It made me feel hollow. For a few weeks after I saw those photos and that bank withdrawal, everything in my life went out of focus. I still woke up at 4:30 for my coffee shift, but I moved like a robot, steaming milk and calling out names, while my mind replayed that comment. "So proud of my girl," over and over. My customers would tell me to have a nice day, and I would smile automatically, but by the time my shift ended, my cheeks hurt from pretending. I stopped filming little cooking videos for emergency eats, telling myself it was just for a few days until I felt better. Those few days turned into almost a month. The app sat on my phone like a reminder of a version of me who actually believed people wanted to hear what she had to say. The youth house where I stayed had a curfew, and every night I would lie on my thin mattress, staring at the ceiling, scrolling through Kayla's perfectly filtered life until my head ached. Part of me hated her, but another part just felt small, like I had lost a game I didn't know we were playing. One morning, I showed up late to the coffee shop, eyes puffy from crying until 3 a.m., and my manager pulled me aside. "This is the 3rd time this month you've been late, Lexi," he said, not unkind, but firm. "I like you, but I cannot keep you if this continues." Something about hearing those words out loud snapped me back to the bus stop, to the feeling of being one mistake away from having nowhere to sleep. I mumbled an apology and promised to get it together, then barely made it through the shift without breaking down. That afternoon, instead of going straight back to the youth house, I went to see Rachel. She was in her cramped office at the shelter, surrounded by stacks of files and a crooked motivational poster. She took one look at my face and said, "Close the door, sit down, tell me what happened." I told her everything in one long, ugly rush. The photos, the comments, the bank withdrawal, the way my mom had rewritten the story to turn me into the villain who ran away. By the time I finished, my voice was hinning and my eyes felt raw. Rachel handed me a tissue, but did not say the usual things people say like, "She probably did her best," or "Maybe she did not know what she was doing." Instead, she said quietly, "Sometimes the most dangerous thing for us is the story people tell about us when we are not in the room. You cannot control that, but you can control the story you tell about yourself." A few days later, my friend Jordan from class noticed that I had stopped posting on emergency eats. We were studying together in the library when he glanced at my phone screen and asked, "Hey, why did you bail on those cooking videos? They were actually good." I shrugged and said, "It's stupid. No one cares about some broke girl making meals out of canned beans." Jordan snorted. "I care. Apparently, the 20,000 people who watched your last video care too. You know, most people would kill for that kind of engagement, right?" I hadn't even realized one of my older videos had quietly taken off while I was busy spiraling. We pulled up my account, and there it was, a simple clip of me making 3 different dinners out of $5 worth of groceries, sitting at almost 50,000 views. There were comments from people saying things like, "I'm a single mom and this helped," or "I'm working 2 jobs and this made me feel less alone." For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than anger or exhaustion. I felt seen. Rachel's words about choosing my own story and Jordan's blunt honesty started to blend into my head. My mom had stolen my savings, rewritten my exit as me running away, and replaced me with a prettier narrative. But she couldn't control what I did with the life that came after. One night, instead of doom scrolling my mom's new life, I set my phone up on a shelf in the youth house kitchen and hit record again. My hands shook a little as I chopped onions on the scratched countertop, talking straight into the camera about how to make a full week of lunches from 1 rotisserie chicken and a bag of rice. I didn't mention Monica or Kayla, but every word was fueled by the knowledge that I had survived what they did to me. I posted the video before I could talk myself out of it. Within a few hours, the notifications started trickling in. Not a viral explosion, just a steady stream of likes, saves, and comments from people who sounded as tired and broke as I had the night I first slept at that bus stop. Reading them, I realized something important. My mom's opinion of me had almost destroyed me because I had let it be the only voice that mattered. But now there were other voices, from strangers who only knew me as the girl who could turn scraps into dinner. That girl felt worth fighting for. I decided that if I was going to drag myself out of bed at 4:30, it wouldn't just be for a paycheck and a manager's approval. It would be for the future version of me who would never have to ask anyone, especially my mother, for permission to exist. I didn't know it yet, but the more I poured myself into that tiny account, the closer I was getting to the moment when my story and hers would collide in front of everyone. By the time 3 years had crawled by, the girl who slept at a bus stop with $20 in her wallet was almost unrecognizable, at least on paper. I was 21, 1 semester away from finishing my associate's degree in digital marketing, and Emergency Eats had grown from a shaky joke account into a real brand. It didn't happen overnight. It was thousands of tiny choices stacked on top of each other, like the cheap ingredients I kept turning into meals. I filmed before dawn in the youth house kitchen after closing shifts at the coffee shop, in borrowed apartments while friends were at work. I experimented with lighting made from desk lamps and aluminum foil, filmed with my phone balanced on towers of cereal boxes and cookbooks. I learned how to edit on free apps, cut dead air, add captions so people could watch on mute during night shifts. Somewhere between all the exhaustion, one of my series caught fire. I called it Emergency Eats $5, 3 meals, where I would walk through the aisles of a discount grocery store and show exactly what I was buying, then cook it all on camera. People loved seeing the receipt, the total, the feeling that it was actually doable. The video that really blew up was me making a week's worth of lunches from 1 rotisserie chicken, a bag of rice, and a couple of frozen veggie bags. I woke up one morning to my notifications frozen, my follower count jumping, and brands I'd only seen in other people's sponsorships suddenly with offers. At first, it was just free products and small gift cards. Then, a local discount grocery chain reached out offering to sponsor a series if I used their sale items and mentioned their app. I almost cried in the back room of the coffee shop when I read that email, partly from excitement, partly from the sting that my mom wasn't there to see what I'd pulled off. But then I reminded myself she had chosen not to be there. With sponsorship money trickling in and my delivery side hustle, I finally saved enough to move out of the youth house and into a tiny studio apartment in a not great but not terrifying part of Phoenix. It was just me, a wobbly secondhand table, a mattress on the floor, and a kitchen with cabinets that did not close properly. But it was mine. No one could yank the key out of my hand and tell me to get out. As Emergency Eats grew, I started hearing from people all over the country. Single parents, college students, older folks on fixed incomes, all thanking me for helping them stretch $20 an extra few days. I ran a fundraiser with my followers to buy grocery store gift cards for teens at the same shelter that had taken me in. For the first time in my life, I felt like what I knew had value. And yet, whenever I had a quiet night alone after filming, my thumb would drift to the search bar and type in my mom's name. Monica was still living her carefully curated life with Elliot Harper. Their photos looked like ads for a life insurance commercial. Matching outfits at charity galas, vacations to Sedona, smiling selfies at car shows where Elliot unveiled some new shiny project. Kayla was always in the background somewhere, holding a designer bag, flashing perfect nails, acting like she had built the empire herself. It stung less now, but the dull ache never completely went away. The first crack I saw in their picture-perfect life came in the form of a comment under one of Kayla's posts. She had posted a video showing off a pile of new clothes and electronics, tagging a bunch of brands. Buried under the "You are goals" and "I wish I had your life" comments. Someone had written, "Funny, you still haven't paid me back for that tablet you bought with my card." At first, I thought it was just a troll, but then I noticed more comments popping up on different posts. People mentioning chargebacks, orders that never showed up, credit card disputes connected to a Kayla H. At the same time, local Phoenix community groups started sharing stories about a teenage girl who would buy things under other people's names, then deny it when the bank called. No one said her full name publicly, but the details matched too closely to be random. I did not reach out to any of them. I did not encourage anyone to attack her. I just started paying attention. I screenshotted comments before they got deleted, saved links to posts where people talked about being scammed, copied down dates and little details, not because I wanted to play internet detective, but because for the first time, I could see the pattern clearly. While I had been learning how to stretch every dollar, they had been learning how to squeeze every loophole. Every time I scrolled through Monica's profile, it struck me how desperately she tried to sell the story that she was a savior mom who had rescued a lost teen and built a perfect family. There was still no trace of me anywhere, no photos of the daughter she had literally shoved out her front door. I felt anger, sure, but there was something else too, a strange kind of distance. 3 years earlier, that eraser would have shattered me. Now, with my own tiny empire built on rice, beans, and honesty, it just made her look small. One afternoon, after filming a sponsored video about making crisis meals with pantry staples, I sat down at my crooked table, opened my laptop, and stared at the Emergency Eats homepage. My audience knew the tips and tricks, the recipes and hacks. What they did not know was why I had started in the first place. They saw the girl who joked about being broke, not the 18-year-old who had watched her mother choose a richer man over her own child and then lie about it. I thought about Rachel's words about owning my story and Jordan laughing at me for underestimating my impact. My mom had been telling her version of the story for 3 years, the one where I was a selfish kid who walked away. Thanks to that, she had landed herself in a life surrounded by expensive things and a stepdaughter who treated fraud like a hobby. The irony was that I did not have to invent anything to make her look bad. All I had to do was finally tell the truth on the one platform I knew she could not control. The idea sat in my chest like a warm coal for days. I went back and forth, weighing the morality of it. I didn't want anyone harassing her, and I did not want to become the kind of person who used their platform to destroy lives just because they could. But this wasn't some petty grudge. This was about a pattern of lying, stealing, and rewriting reality at the expense of anyone who got in her way, including her own kid. One night, while editing a new recipe video, I opened a fresh project and titled it, "My Mom Kicked Me Out at 18 with No Money and No Job." I stared at the words for a long time before closing my eyes and hitting save. I wasn't ready to record it yet, but for the first time, I knew exactly how I wanted the story to end. And it did not involve me staying quiet while she pretended none of it had ever happened. I did not hit record on that story video for weeks. The file just sat there on my laptop, the title staring back at me every time I opened my editing software. My mom kicked me out at 18 with no money and no job. It looked dramatic even to me, and I had lived it. I kept telling myself I was too busy, that I should focus on recipes and brand deals, but deep down, I knew I was stalling because once I put that story out there, there was no taking it back. One night, after finishing a batch of recipe clips, I found myself alone in my tiny studio, the only light coming from the ring light I used for filming. The desert heat was still clinging to the walls, even though the sun had been down for hours. I could hear my upstairs neighbor's TV and the faint hum of traffic. It felt like the kind of night when people make choices they cannot undo. I set up my phone on the tripod, sat at my wobbly table, and for once, there were no bags of rice or cans of beans in front of me. Just me, a glass of water, and the truth. I took a deep breath, hit record, and started talking. I didn't script it word for word, but I knew the beats. I told them my name, my age, the city I lived in. I described the sound of the trash bag hitting the floor, my mom's voice telling me I was 18, broke, jobless, and therefore no longer her responsibility. I talked about sitting at that bus stop with $20 in my wallet and nowhere to go, about washing my face in a convenience store bathroom and pretending I still had a home. I told them about a Rachel in the shelter, the early morning coffee shifts, the delivery runs that left my legs shaking. Then I told them about emergency eats and how the channel started because I needed to prove to myself that I could make something useful out of almost nothing. I almost stopped there, but Rachel's words echoed in my head. You can control the story you tell about yourself. So I told the rest. I told them how I had looked my mom up online and found her new life, how she had replaced me with a richer man and a ready-made stepdaughter, and told people I'd just decided to leave and not look back, how the money I had saved for college had quietly vanished right before my birthday, drawn out of my account and never spoken of again. I did not say her last name. I did not mention the city she lived in now or show any pictures. I blurred every screenshot I used and changed small details that weren't important to the truth. I said the only thing that mattered was the pattern, parents who choose to rewrite the story instead of owning what they have done. Before I finished, I leaned closer to the camera and made something very clear. I said, listen, if any of this sounds familiar to you, do not go digging or trying to guess who my mom is. Do not send hate to anyone you think might be involved. That is not what this is about. This is about people who have been told they're disposable, realizing they're not. If you want to do something, tell your own story instead of attacking mine. When I played the recording back, my voice shook in places, but I sounded calmer than I felt. I edited the video down to about 12 minutes, added subtitles, and uploaded it with the title, My Mom Kicked Me Out at 18 with No Money and No Job. Here's what happened next. My finger hovered over the post button for a long time, then I pressed it, locked my phone, and forced myself to go wash dishes before I could watch the numbers. For a few hours, nothing seemed different. I answered some emails, prepped ingredients for the next recipe video, tried not to think about whether my mom would ever see this. Then, sometime after midnight, my phone buzzed so hard it almost slid off the counter. When I picked it up, my notifications were a blur. Comments poured in so fast I couldn't keep up. People telling me their own versions of that story. Parents apologizing on behalf of moms like mine. Kids saying, this happened to me too, with different details but the same hollow ache. Most of them did exactly what I had asked. They focused on their own survival, their own healing. But the internet is full of people who love puzzles. It didn't take long before a few comments started to ask careful questions. Wait, did you grow up near this part of Phoenix? Someone else said, I think I know this hotel chain you were talking about. And then, buried under hundreds of replies, a comment I could not ignore. It said, if this is who I think it is, your mom has been telling everyone for years that you ran away and refused to talk to her. I used to work with her. We all thought you were some wild child who abandoned her. If this is you, I am sorry for believing that. I did not respond, but my hand shook as I scrolled. I never asked anyone to go to my mom's page. I never once mentioned her by name. But people talk, and Phoenix is not as big as it looks. Former coworkers, neighbors, people who recognized her from photos started connecting dots on their own, inside conversations I was not a part of. Then the stories about Kayla started surfacing for real. A woman commented that a teen who looked a lot like my description had bought electronics using her card info when she trusted her to help with an online purchase. Someone else mentioned repeated chargebacks tied to the same last name at Elliot's auto business. They did not say her full name, but they said enough. I did not pin those comments. I did not like them. I did not need to. They took on a life of their own. A few days later, an email popped into my business inbox from a name that made my chest clench: Elliot Harper. He introduced himself politely, said he had seen my video after someone sent it to him, and that parts of my story felt disturbingly familiar. Then he asked one question. Was your mother's first name Monica? I stared at that sentence for a long time. I could have ignored it. I could have lied. Instead, I typed yes and hit send, then closed my laptop before I could overthink it. I do not know exactly what happened in the Harper house after that. I was not there when Elliot confronted my mom, when he compared the timeline in my video to the one she had fed him. I was not there when he pulled bank statements, when he called the bank back about those strange credit card disputes tied to Kayla's shopping sprees. All I know is that about a week after I answered his email, my phone started buzzing in a different way. The first message came through while I was filming a new recipe. It was from a number I had deleted but still recognized by heart. I am sorry. The next one, please answer, I need to explain. Then, they are saying horrible things about me, about us. Please help me fix this. Over the next few hours, the texts kept coming. She told me Elliot had thrown her out of his house after finding out the truth, that Kayla was under investigation for credit card fraud, and that the police had asked questions about what Monica knew and when she knew it. She said she might lose her job at the hotel because her name was being whispered around in connection with the investigation. She said she was scared, alone, and that I was the only one who could save her reputation by telling people it was all a misunderstanding. At one point, she wrote, I should not have kicked you out. I was stressed and stupid. Please, I am begging you, just talk to me. For a moment, all the old instincts flared up, the part of me that had trained itself since childhood to fix things, to smooth over her messes, to be the reasonable one. I pictured her sitting in some half-empty apartment, phone in hand, staring at the door the way I had at 18. I could have picked up. I could have rewritten the ending, made it softer for her. Instead, I thought about that bus stop, the nights in the youth shelter, the comments under my video from people who had never gotten closure. I thought about how she had told an entire world I had walked away when she was the one who shut the door. I looked at her last message, please save me, and realized she still did not see me as a person, just as a tool, a public relations strategy, a shield. My phone kept buzzing in my hand. I opened our message thread one last time, read it from the beginning, from the first, I am sorry, to the last, please, I need you. Then I went to my settings, turned off notifications from her number, and set the phone face down on the table. The sound cut off mid-buzz. The silence that followed was not empty. It was heavy, solid, like finally closing a door from my side for once. For the first time in my life, my mom needed something from me, and I chose to say nothing. And somehow that quiet felt louder than every scream I had swallowed the night she kicked me out. In the weeks after I turned my phone face down on that table, the noise around my story slowly shifted from chaos to something quieter, heavier, more permanent. The video kept climbing, but the comment sections settled into a mix of recipes people were trying and stories they felt brave enough to share because I had shared mine. I never made a follow-up exposing anyone, never dropped names or receipts beyond what I had already said. I didn't have to. Phoenix moved on the way cities do, but there are always ripples. I heard about them in fragments, mostly from people who had no idea I was the one at the center. A regular at the coffee shop mentioned that a manager at a hotel near the airport had been let go after her name started floating around in connection with a fraud investigation involving her boyfriend's kid. Someone from my community college who still had family in that suburb casually said, Remember that fancy couple with the car shops I told you about? Yeah. He broke off his engagement and kicked them out after finding out they lied about some pretty serious stuff. I pretended to be surprised, stirred my coffee, and kept my face neutral while my heart pounded. I did not celebrate. There was no evil laugh, no montage of me dancing on their metaphorical graves. It felt more like standing in the middle of an earthquake that had finally stopped and realizing the building you live in is still standing. From what I pieced together, Kayla did not end up in some Lifetime movie prison cell, but the fraud investigation was real. She wound up with probation, a record that would follow her when she tried to apply for certain jobs, and mandatory classes about financial responsibility and online safety. Monica did not go to jail either, but the fallout from lying and trying to cover things up was enough. Elliot broke up with her. The hotel did not want someone whose name came up in police reports welcoming guests at the front desk. Without his money or that job, she had to move into a much smaller apartment in a part of town that looked a lot more like the one we used to live in than the spotless suburb she had flaunted online. The friends who had believed her, "my daughter ran away" story went very quiet. I saw all of this in glimpses, like looking into a house through cracks in the blinds. Sometimes people would send me links or screenshots assuming I would be thrilled. The truth is, I mostly felt tired. Not regretful, not exactly satisfied either, just done. While their world tilted, mine kept moving forward. Emergency Eats kept growing. I finished my degree. Instead of just teaching people how to stretch $10 at the store, I started adding videos about building emergency savings, about knowing your rights if you get kicked out or cut off, about where to find local shelters and food banks without feeling like you have failed. I partnered with the shelter Rachel worked at to create a small grant fund. A chunk of my sponsorship money goes into buying grocery gift cards and basic kitchen starter kits for teens aging out of foster care or leaving unsafe homes. Sometimes we do live Zoom classes where I teach them how to cook with whatever they can afford that week. Those are the days I wish I could go back to 18-year-old me at that bus stop and tell her, one day you will feed people who are exactly where you are sitting right now. Rachel still checks in on me like some unofficial aunt. Jordan loves reminding me that he called my videos valuable before any brand did. There are nights I still think about my mom. Not the Instagram version with the polished smile, but the woman who chain-smoked outside our apartment when the rent was due and snapped at me because she had no one else to take it out on. I picture her in that smaller place, scrolling through her phone, seeing my face pop up on someone's For You page, and realizing that ignoring me did not erase me. I have not blocked her number. I just do not answer. It is not about punishing her anymore. It is about protecting the life I fought for. Maybe one day I will be ready to hear her voice again. Maybe not. Either way, the apology I needed most did not come from her. It came from myself. The moment I stopped believing I was the problem, just because that was easier for her than facing what she did. People love to say that family is everything, but I do not think that is always true. Family is not just the people who share your last name or your blood. Sometimes it is the social worker who pushes a stack of housing forms toward you and says you deserve a safe place to sleep. Sometimes it is the friend who drags you back to your own potential when you are too numb to see it. Sometimes it is strangers on the internet who tell you that your story helped them cook dinner or find the courage to leave a situation that is breaking them. My mom once told me that if I wanted to survive alone, I should go do it. She meant it as punishment. In the end, it became my superpower. I survived without her. And then I learned how to help other people survive too. That, more than any scandal or job loss she faced, is the part that feels like real revenge. Living a life so rooted in truth and resilience that her version of me can never exist again. So if any part of this sounds uncomfortably familiar, if you have ever been told you are ungrateful or dramatic for noticing the way someone is hurting you, I hope you hear this clearly. You are not crazy for wanting better. You are not selfish for setting boundaries, even with the people who raised you. And if you feel safe sharing, tell your story, not to destroy anyone, but to remind someone else huddled at their own metaphorical bus stop that they are not as alone or as disposable as they have been.